So hello everybody and welcome to Mindful Ohio's Friday LiveCast. I know some of you may just be joining us live or you may be watching this later on recording. I am being joined today by quite literally one of my oldest friends, Lindsey Goodman. So I was remembering our story. Lindsey and I actually met in the 7th grade at a writing competition called Power of the Pen. And then we were kind of fellows in geeky activities, but I'm proudly a geek doing things like writing and music and speech and all of that. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie, and hello to the entire Mindfulness Ohio community.
Yes, and I wore purple today in honor of your purple hair. You're known as the lavender. So is it flutist or flautist?
That's probably the most common question that I get asked.
So let's get that
Um,
out of the way up front.
Absolutely. If I had a dime for every time I was asked that, I could retire. So I call myself a flutist because
Hmm.
I play the flute. Now, that being said, there used to be a very distinct separation between the two back
Okay.
in the musical classical era in the
Okay.
1700s, that one flautist was amateur and flutist was a professional, or it might be the
Oh,
opposite. I can't actually remember which.
okay.
But that delineation has fallen by a long time ago. A lot of the Europeans like to say that they're flautists, but I don't play the flout. I just flaunt it.
Well, sounds wonderful. So Lindsay is quite literally a world-class musician. She performed you were in China in 2019 or 2018?
2018.
Yeah, Lindsay went on a tour with one of her groups in China and is a principal flutist for the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra and is in a bunch of different performing projects. And Lindsay and I tend to joke that we kind of have parallel lives, but in different professions in terms of kind of wherever the work is, there we go, right?
Absolutely. I actually think this is a wonderful thing about the fact that we have been friends for so long. We knew each
Hmm.
other first through writing, and then in high school, we were involved in speech and debate, which was
Hmm.
also for us extremely theatrical. And so,
Us theatrical? No.
and so we've had these sort of fantastic artistic lives, and it's true, so many musicians live the sort of lifestyle that you and I do, but
Right.
outside music, there I don't really have any other friends or colleagues who live this sort of globe trekking existence other than you, which is so wonderful that after all these years, here we are still being creative, still being entrepreneurial, and living our best life.
So tell us what life is looking like for you now, because as we Globetrotters can attest, we're not really able to Globetrot right now and to do a lot of work in public venues that we're used to. So yeah, help us understand how all of this has been hitting you, Lindsay.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous change. So as someone who primarily performs, I'm used to spending usually about half of each month on the road. And that's often split between different projects. I have some full-time appointments with orchestras or other ensembles, or I might be off touring doing a specific project. And then from time to time, I'll be gone for an entire month, like when I toured China with my trio, or when I played at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in Scotland and was there for all of August last year.
Mhm.
But it averages to be about a half of each month that I'm on the road. And then the other half of the month, I'm usually at my home here in Pickerington, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus. I call it lovingly my Esterhazy. There was a very notable
Mm.
composer, Haydn, who for a long time composed at this estate called Esterhazy as an aristocratic. He was the composer for hire for this particular aristocrat.
Mhm.
And here out in the country, he became more creative than anyone of his generation because he wasn't being influenced by the fads of Berlin or Vienna or the other
Mm.
large areas. And so I call my little suburb, my tiny home, my Esterhazy, where I get to experiment and refuel and then go back out into the world with fabulous purple fantasticness.
So this
Uh,
may be a good time for you to put on the tiara. So Lindsay and I both share a love of Downton Abbey. That is my background, if you're wondering what my background is today. And yes,
oh,
Lindsay and I will affectionately refer to ourselves as Lady Pickerington and Lady Howland. So
indeed.
And Lindsey, it's something I've long admired about you is, as I was telling you, in the expressive arts and expressive arts therapy, we really focus on how the arts play with each other and really embracing that. And I just love, like, even stories like the ones you just told. You're so well steeped in history and culture, and you're a very gifted writer. And even when I've watched you perform, you just bring in so many of the other arts into what you do. So help me understand a little bit about your musical journey and how things happened for you.
Absolutely. I think that, I started playing the flute at a very, very young age. My dad had played the flute when he was in high school, and so there was just one in the house. I don't really
Mm,
remember learning how to make a sound. It was just always there, and I could.
mm,
By the time I started formal studies on flute, I had already been dancing for several
mhm.
years, um, taking dance classes as many young girls do, and was really excited by all sorts of visual arts. I still am. One of the things I have here in my studio is I have a large selection of different coloring books because we can never stop being creative. Um, and then
Exactly.
and then later I became very passionate about writing. In my middle school and high school years, won kind of a lot of like national writing awards, and I was very much pushed into becoming an English major because that seemed like a way to get a nice steady job.
Mhm.
But I really was in love with music and decided to pursue this passion. But even though I put the other arts to the side, I feel like I've always had a way of keeping them involved. So for me, one of my signature things is that I call myself the electroacoustic flutist.
Mm,
So this means that I do solo performances that combine my acoustic flute with electronic technology, whether that's fixed media soundtrack pieces like playing along with pre-existing music, or having pieces that are live processed where the computer technology and the microphone are creating the accompaniment along with me. This is a way that I feel like I can be more creative
mm,
alongside collaborating with living composers who do these sort of things.
yeah.
So when I do electroacoustic performances, I like to think of the entire experience. I really think that the relationship between a performer and the audience is sacred. For me, a performance venue is a sacred space where I am to hold space for my audience, where whatever needs they have at the end of their long and filled day, that they can come in and be healed through the music. And so that means that the way I present myself, the way I move, the way I look, the way I choose to write material and then speak and present it in a more theatrical way in between, whether I choose to use some props, whether I choose sometimes to use video, that I'm really creating an immersive experience for my audiences so that they can feel healed by the experience.
Just beautiful. And so, what's it looking like now with not having physical venues available?
It's really sad.
Hmm.
Um, it now at this point that we're in, like, what are we on nearly day 80?
Right. I always
It,
say, "How are you on this day of the apocalypse?" Usually, when I greet people. Yeah.
it's true. Um, so yes, we're nearing in on day 80, and at this point, I think I've had enough time that I have gone through the stages of grief
Mm,
enough that I can now identify when they come at a much slower rate of pace. There
mm.
was a long time where I went through all the stages of grief multiple times in one day.
And that's really how it's intended to be, because they're not stages in a linear fashion. They're
No.
more like, pardon my French, a cluster fuck of
Yes,
things hitting you all at once. Yeah.
absolutely. And so at this point, I feel that I have adapted in a way that I feel much more forward looking rather than backward looking at what has been lost. I've finally
Right.
gotten to the place where I've cleared my calendar of all that used to be and I've filled it with what will be, which is a wonderful opportunity to have time for growth, which is wonderful. But it's still very sad because with music, I can make music for myself all day long. I'm still here in my studio playing and practicing every day. But I've always thought of any sort of creative pursuit as a triangle. There's the creator, there's the conduit, like the performer, the actor, the therapist, and then there's the audience, the person who receives it. And unless you have those three sacred parts together, you don't actually have the experience. It can feel
Mm-hmm.
great to play flute by myself in my studio, but it's not art making because the other parties aren't there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a tremendous loss. And it's been the biggest grief I've experienced in all of this.
Yeah. And I think when I hear people share grief of that nature, there's really nothing you can say other than take a breath and let yourself feel what you feel with it. Because, yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, grief has shown up in many different ways for people throughout
Absolutely.
this.
And I
Um,
feel so lucky that I haven't actually lost anyone to the
right.
pandemic. There are people who are dealing with obviously physical grief, but
Yeah.
I think holding space for people as they go through all sorts of grief in this situation is so important.
Right. So I do want to talk about ways you are managing to still work your craft online. So you've instructed via distance modalities for quite some time.
Absolutely. I
So what
have oh sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
No, I
Sorry.
just anything you want to anything you want to share about how that works, because I think what you might have to share as a musician may actually benefit therapists who are listening to this, who have been
Fantastic.
kind of suddenly thrust into this world of needing to work remotely.
Right. So I have actually been teaching flute lessons online for over 6 years. It
Mm,
was a very sort of organic and unexpected approach to delivering virtual material one-on-one to students. It started by I teach at a very small college, and the 4 hour round trip mileage payment was a little bit too much for them all the time.
hmm
So they
hmm
started asking, would you deliver some lessons remotely? And I'm like, of course, I'd be happy not to do that,
Yeah.
Kate. That'd be fine.
Mhm.
And I started that way. And then I had some students who moved out of my geographic area. As the principal flutist of the West Virginia Symphony, it's a wonderful, wonderful mountain state, but there's not a lot of quality instruction for what I do in all aspects of that state. And yet I'm a
hmm
very visible picture
hmm
of what flute playing looks like. So I've had a number of students from lesser lesser populated geographic areas who wanted to study. And so I sort of organically grew a online teaching studio, which has
hmm
been fantastic. Some students stay with me for years.
hmm
Some students come when they have a specific project, you know,
Right.
I want to take this audition. I want to get into this college. I want to learn this piece or this skill.
hmm
And so I've really enjoyed this sort of one on one work that's possible through the power of the internet.
Right.
So I felt very lucky that on March 12th, when the world imploded, that I was able to very quickly send out an email to all of my students at all of my colleges and all my private students who see me in person and say, guess what, guys? This might
hmm
be new to you, but it's old hat for me. Follow
hmm
these steps. We'll run a test. I'll see you next week on your screen.
Nice, nice. So what is your preferred platform? Because I mean, even therapists are having this question now, like what seems to be the most stable, and especially with music and potentials like internet lags, what do you prefer?
Absolutely. So the big consideration for musicians in using virtual delivery is absolutely sound quality.
hmm
So for me, I all platforms compress sound differently. And for the flute, if you compress too much highs, I can't help my students.
hmm
I can't hear it accurately to assist. So I've been using FaceTime whenever possible.
Hmm.
Newer Apple devices have fantastic built-in microphones, so I can hear my students more accurately.
Hmm.
After that, for Android or Windows or PC people, I've actually been using Skype because that's the
hmm
second best sound quality. Zoom is sort of like my third choice. It has
Hmm.
the least music friendly audio
Right.
capacity. So
Yeah.
interestingly enough, even though I've been using it a lot to do presentations, reaching out to a lot of different colleges and universities to talk about a lot of different topics, including how to effectively pivot to teaching online.
hmm
This is my preferred platform for if I'm doing any sort of group things. But one-to-one, I've really preferred the better audio quality on those other platforms.
Great. Thanks for that insight.
Yeah,
So, and tell us also, you've been doing some recitals.
I sure have because a performer's got to perform.
Sure.
If I don't try to connect with an audience, I will die inside. So the thing I've been doing is I've been dressing in an evening gown, putting on full hair and makeup and turning on the Facebook live stream from my living room.
I love
I,
it.
I've been presenting these live streamed recitals once a month, and I have a series of them lined up through August.
Hmm.
It's been really fascinating to see how our arts community has really provided some great new tools. There are several now different concert presenters who specialize in live streamed recitals.
Hmm.
And most of these are donation based. And so, because performers are obviously not earning by performing right now, it's been fantastic. They're happy to say, here's your PayPal, here's your Venmo, here's your
Yeah.
Cash App, leave a virtual tip jar for your performer. And it's really been the very first recital I gave was the strangest experience I've ever had because well you know this, right? When you're standing and presenting and when you're speaking, right?
Hmm.
There's that thumbing in the air, that excited electricity that flows between you and other people when you're all having a shared experience,
Hmm.
right? And that's what happens every time I'm in a concert hall. And here I was staring at my phone in my living room, and there was no buzz.
Right. Yeah.
And when I finished a piece, there was just silence. There was no
Hmm.
applause.
Hmm.
It was really hard.
Yeah.
But then going back and looking through the Facebook Live comments at
Hmm.
everybody saying, oh, I loved this thing, or this was amazing, or
Yeah.
we're here. I really truly felt connected. The
Hmm.
next hour of connecting with all those people through their comments was incredible.
Yes.
And so I've really loved this process, and I'm looking forward to presenting these live streamed recitals all summer.
How wonderful. And I mean, I could just speak from my experience on Sunday. I took a complete computer break because I mean, I'm obviously pretty computered out, but I
Yeah.
obviously used my phone to take in a recording of one of your recitals. And oh, it was just such a perfect thing to do on an afternoon when I wanted to get into a nice space of relaxation. And yeah, and at the end of this, we'll tell people where they could find you. I just want to share. I relate very significantly because even before this, I would do webinars when I was invited, but they were my least favorite way to teach because of what you talked about, that connection with people, the buzz. I get the buzz, you know, even
I knew you did.
like, yeah. And so when I knew, I remember like the week everything hit, I think the week after I was supposed to be teaching in London, and I love London crowds and teaching there, and the whole course was going online. And I know my first reaction was, I don't know how I'm going to teach this particular course online. But I've really learned how to use chat to keep people engaged. I've learned how to bring in some others of my team to work the chat while I teach. Uh, at all possible, if I could do Zoom meetings so I can see people, it creates a little bit more of that. And I mean, I've adapted because I've had to, even though
Right.
there was a natural grief that's come along with it. And even though there's a lot I miss about teaching live, and I look forward to getting back to it when I can, I also know that a lot more people in the world are connecting with my work where travel's been a barrier. So
Absolutely.
there's
I
a, oh,
Once again, our synchronicity is amazing. I feel all of
yeah.
those things, all of
Hmm.
those things. And actually, my favorite thing is that there are tons of people, friends and family and fans who have always wanted to hear me perform live and have never been near me. I have people hearing my performances now that literally have been trying for years and have never had the
Hmm.
opportunity. So it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your experiences with us.
Of course.
I guess just the one kind of final big question I want us to talk about is just, you know, what impact all of this is going to have on the arts in general. Because at the beginning of this, I saw a really good meme floating around Facebook, something to the effect of just try getting through quarantine without the arts and then tell me that the arts aren't essential, like what we do with taking in TV and movies and reading and music. And I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you that the arts are essential, but artists are taking some of the biggest hit right now. So you know, anything you can share about what you see the future being and how anyone who's a who benefits from the arts can help.
Right. Well, I couldn't agree more. I think that we're all getting through thanks to the expressive arts. If I weren't reading every day, if I weren't watching some Netflix or Hulu, if I
Right.
weren't coloring every day, if I weren't listening to music every day, I would have long ago gone completely off the deep end. And I think we're absolutely all feeling that way. Every time I connect with a new audience or a new student, I take time to acknowledge that, to remember this is where the value is
Hmm.
in the power of that authentic connection and that authentic emotional expression and release through the arts. So it's so true. I think that now more than ever, we recognize as a world, as human beings, that the arts have so much value.
Yes.
The issue has always been that business and politics don't understand that value in the same way as individuals.
Mm.
And so it's really important during this time to continue some best practices. There is a lot of stuff now that's available online for free. Go tour this museum, look at this art collection, watch this Broadway play, listen to this performance, for all for free, which is wonderful. But I urge people who are taking in art and feeling affected and healed by art during
Hmm.
this time to seek out the opportunities that actually require some sort of payment or
Sure.
some sort of donation.
Hmm.
Because if we don't take the time and the financial
Hmm.
responsibility to support our artists and our arts organizations now, when we're all free to move about the world as we once did again, we will be shocked at the number of organizations that have shuttered their doors, the theater companies and the dance companies and the musical organizations and the museums. If we don't support them now, the very things that are getting us through, they won't be there later.
Yeah.
So I've been really urging my friends and my fan base and my social communities that if you had any sort of tickets or any sort of events planned with arts organizations, please donate those tickets back. Please
Yeah.
don't ask for a refund if possible. Please make it a donation if at all possible. And if there are organizations and individual artists you love, now is the time to support them directly. We love
Correct.
Spotify. We love YouTube. We love iTunes. But all of these things pay hundreds of
Peanuts. Yeah.
pennies.
Hmm.
Whereas if you go to the website of a favorite musician and buy an album directly from them, they'll probably autograph it to you, and all of that money adds up in your pocket.
Hmm.
And that's really helping them more.
Right.
If you're looking for Father's Day gifts and birthday
Hmm.
gifts in this time, go to the online stores of your favorite places, whether those are museum gift shops or other places, and try to support those with your
Hmm.
financial gifts. There's been a lot of talk about supporting local, but
Hmm.
support arts if it's important to you by
Hmm.
trying to reach people exactly where they are.
Sure. I agree 100% with what you're offering. And if you are somebody, I know this word gets a lot of attention, with good reason. If you are somebody who's privileged,
Mhm.
to be able to donate back or to be able to support financially, please do that. And I just agree 100% because that's how people, I mean, I think we all have, because I know I've struggled with this, like the balance between what do I give away versus
Mhm.
what, I do need to make a living,
Right.
and there's a value to what I offer. And I mean, I do applaud venues that have made some things available for free.
Mhm.
But I've even put out the by donation
Right.
because we still want to emphasize that what we do has value and we
Absolutely.
want that value to be respected going forward. So
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
yeah. And if you don't have the financial means right now, because it's not lost on me that it's
Mhm.
tight, share the pages of your favorite, especially independent artists, share their YouTube channels, anything you can do to get the word out. As an author, um, if you can afford a book, great. If you can't, share the link because that sharing and paying it forward is certainly useful in the long run. So, Lindsey, how can people find you? Let's talk about that to
Oh,
connect with you. And Lindsey's recorded 3 albums, which are amazing, and yeah, you have a chance to support.
There you go. So I'm very easy to find at lindseygoodman.com, LindseyGoodman. And all of the socials, Facebook is Lindsey Goodman Flutist, Twitter and Instagram are Lindsey J. Goodman, and I'm posting and updating there on a daily basis. Lots of fun things, different things like this, different
Yes.
podcasts and radio broadcasts and different presentations and live stream performances. And then I'm also sharing some great things from my YouTube channel, past performances, just as offerings to the universe.
Mhm. And
So please
yeah.
connect with me by all means. As Jamie said, I have 3 albums. I'd be happy to autograph them and mail them to you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Check it out. And I just fondly remember I have to tell this story of when you and I were juniors in high school and had just learned how to drive, right? And we're driving down 224 in Boardman, Ohio, singing Andrew Lloyd Webber at the top of our lungs with the windows open.
Absolutely. Everyone else, I think, was listening to Eminem at the time, and we were listening to the greatest hits of Andrew Lloyd Webber, every word memorized.
Because that's who we were. That's who we still are, and I'm damn proud of it.
I still am happy to fly my geek flag proud.
Yes.
You know, it has made me who I am today. It has made me able to connect with people without fear, and I'm grateful for it and for friends like you who are part of that important journey.
What a wonderful way to end this, Lindsey Goodman. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jamie.